Hello, welcome. This is the International Peace Coalition. This is the 83rd meeting that we've had in a row. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your moderator today, as well as Dennis Small and Dennis Speed, who will be co-moderating with me. We created this forum 83 weeks ago in order to unite the peace movement around the world, which quite frankly, and I've said this many times, it has been very dysfunctional. There has been a lot of infiltration from many enemies against peace to make it dysfunctional. And so we wanted to create this opportunity for people of the left, the right, anything in between, from all nations to come together. If you are for true peace, then you are welcome here. And we want to coordinate our activities around the world to have the greatest effect possible. So we know that this is a very important mission and goal, and not the easiest thing to do, but the most important thing to do right now, especially when we're facing thermonuclear world war and a horrible genocide unfolding in Gaza. So we pulled together an open panelist today, which is actually very special. We have Doctors Against Genocide, many of doctors who have been in Gaza who will be joining us today and discussing their activities, but also general overview of what's happening in the world politically in regards to the political situation and the war situation. So to start us off today, we're going to have Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition, to get us started. Please go ahead, Helga.
Hello, let me greet all of you. I think most people in the world are aware of the fact that we are reaching, I think, a point of decision where, in this year, which just started a few days ago, in all likelihood, a break point will come, either a terrible catastrophe in the form of that one of the two regional wars and crises could develop into a global war. That danger is very real. But it could also be that a new paradigm emerges and that our mobilization succeeds to catapult humanity into a more human way of relating to each other among the nations of the world. Both options are very close. I think the year 2025 will for sure experience the unraveling of the global order as it existed, especially in the last 40 years. And that is the view of Fyodor Lukyanov, who is the chief editor of the Russian publication Global Affairs. And I report this here because I think it's an interesting angle from which to look at the world. What he says is that the period which started 40 years ago, when Gorbachev became the general secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, that that was combined with the wish of Russia to open to the West and be part of it, and that whole period is now coming to an end, or has come to an end already. And I think for many vigilant observers, it was already clear that a strategic shift had occurred when the historic meeting took place between President Xi Jinping and President Putin on the 4th of February 2022, where they concluded a deep partnership between Russia and China. And what we have seen since, naturally, is an acceleration of the number of countries who joined the BRICS and who are in an effort to create a new economic system. And unfortunately, this is regarded by some in the West as one more reason to accelerate the war drive. Now, obviously, with President Trump being soon the president in the White House, who has proclaimed America first, that alone does not solve the problem, maybe for some people in the Republican Party, but for sure not on a world scale, because if everybody adopts that slogan, my country first, me first, then that still leaves the world order in a disarray with many multipolar but geopolitically set against each other nations, and that cannot be what has to be accomplished. But we have to talk about a completely new paradigm, which puts humanity first, the one humanity. Now, if you look at the two regional crises, first, the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, just put out a statement saying that the Western elites have concluded that the Ukraine military operation very soon will collapse, that even if the West is sending many more sophisticated weapons, it will not be enough to keep the front line up, for the simple reason that Ukraine is running out of educated, skilled soldiers. And the fact that they have lowered recently the mobilization age to only 18 years, has led to a situation where many people are deserting with their families. The neighbor countries are expecting new waves of refugees. And, everybody is now looking at such a mobilization as a one-way ticket to the front line, of which you don't return. Now, it is very clear that the Ukrainians probably are already acutely aware of the fact that they have been used as a pawn in a proxy war in which their fate is very of little concern. Reports are also clear that the West is aware that this crisis is an existential one for Russia, and that therefore they will under no circumstances back down. And some sources even report, that when they are asked, are you aware that it may lead to a use of nuclear weapons? They say, yeah, sure, we have taken that into account. Now, in the meantime, BlackRock and others like Cargill and other such corporations have bought up already large quantities of the Ukrainian fertile soil. And, it's definitely not a happy situation under the present circumstances for Ukraine. Now, that situation still has the potential to get out of control completely. And we are in a rundown because it's very likely that if Trump comes in, that he will try to seek an agreement on the Ukraine crisis, but that leaves about 3 weeks or a little bit less where a lot of things can happen. Now, the other regional crisis, which has the potential of leading to a larger, even nuclear war, is obviously Southwest Asia, where Richard Nephew, who is a senior research scholar at Columbia University, just wrote an article in Foreign Affairs where he said that he thinks Iran should negotiate with the United States or be bombed on the nuclear facilities, that is. And if Iran does not agree to negotiate on these nuclear facilities, the US would have little choice than to take the military option. Now, Axios reports that Jake Sullivan, apparently already several weeks ago, would have discussed with President Biden, what to do about the Iranian nuclear facilities, that top aides would have reported two trends. On the one side, an acceleration of the Iranian nuclear program, that Iran is trying to hurry that. That is not confirmed, but that's what this article says. And on the other side, the weakening of Iran because of the collapse of Syria, the strikes against Hezbollah, and the strikes on Yemen. And therefore, the opportunity would be there because Iran is weakened. Now, also reports are that the latest efforts to negotiate a ceasefire one more time is going nowhere, because Netanyahu, as he has done many times in the past, just changed the rules, making it more difficult. So, no ceasefire in sight, while the absolutely brutal war against the hospitals in Gaza is fully continuing, completely ignoring the calls by the WHO to stop this. Now, I I didn't have time to prepare this well, but I would suggest that everybody should read or listen to a video by an Indian author, Vajre Prashad, who, in my view, gives an extremely accurate report what will be the effect of the indifference of the West to observe this genocide, and that this will completely ruin or has ruined the reputation of the collective West already, and this has strategic implications, which I have said for a long time. Some people in the West may think this commentary is radical, but I'm absolutely sure that that is what the general trend in the global South is. And, that should be taken into account by people in the West. Now, let me end with a more positive note, and that is that Pope Francis has chosen the Christmas period to announce that the new year 2025 is also a jubilee year in the tradition of the church, which has every 25 years a year where all debt should be forgiven. This is an ancient tradition, and the Pope is arguing absolutely emotionally that no person, no family, no nation should be crushed under the burden of actually odious debt. And Cardinal Senari, who is the nuntius of the Vatican in Damascus since 2008, has also issued an urgent call to the world not to stick to the sanctions for whatever considerations, but in light of the absolutely abysmal situation of the Syrian population, to get going and start the reconstruction in earnest by evoking the words of Pope Paul VI, that the new name for development, new name for peace is development. And that has been the slogan of the Schiller Institute for many, many years. So I think, it is a promising situation, and that we want to basically say that we will announce a campaign of the Schiller Institute to use this Jubilee year to evoke the conscience of church leaders, not just the Catholic Church, but all religious leaders in the world, to act together, and that this genocide immediately must be stopped, and a new paradigm must be put on the world agenda. As I said, the world is changing very rapidly, and therefore let me just read you the names of the countries which have just joined the BRICS, 13 new countries: Belarus, Bolivia, Cuba, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Thailand, Uganda, and Uzbekistan, as of January 1st, are now official members of the BRICS as well. And many more are in the waiting line. So, I think if we can convince the West, the European countries, and the United States, they should stop and must stop the confrontation with the global South, which has become the global majority, and cooperate in a new paradigm, reconstructing the war-torn regions, that is the only way how we can really secure peace. And we call upon all people in the world to join hands with us to make the year 2025 early on the year of such a change.
Thank you so much, Helga, for that opening. I think it is important that we have something to take forward into this new year, which is optimistic, given the pretty atrocious things that have been happening over the last year. So thank you so much for pulling that together. Next, I'd like to go to Ray McGovern, who's a former CIA analyst, co-founder of Veterans Intelligence Professionals for Sanity. He's been a regular on the International Peace Coalition and also a feisty interventionist. So thank you so much for all the work that you've done, Ray. Do we have you on there? There we go. I see you, and we just need to get you unmuted.
Can I be heard?
Yes.
Good. Well, let me just begin by applauding Helga for being one of the best presidential daily briefers that I've run across. Makes my job very easy because she set the stage in such a cogent way. I know that the Gaza doctors are going to be on, and I just want to inject a thought from my faith tradition, which has to do with what was called in my day the slaughter of the innocents. It had to do with the killing of babies, a biblical story. There is some actual historical evidence to support this particular story. Herod, a tool of the empire, the Roman Empire, ordered all children under 2 to be slaughtered in and around Bethlehem because he was afraid. He was afraid of the danger of this little baby because this baby was going to change things. This baby really tried to change things. And we are his descendants in one sense, at least those of us who claim to follow Jesus of Nazareth, because it's up to us now to change things. There are certain items of hope here. No longer can any country, least of all America, pretend to be the sole indispensable country of the world or the exceptional country of the world, because what that reduces itself to is a country that can sit back and watch 500,000 children under the age of 5 be slaughtered. That happened when there were sanctions on Iraq, and our Secretary of State was later asked, do you think that's worth it? 500,000 young children. And she said, yes, that's worth it. Well, I refer back to then because now is now. We have carnage in Gaza. We have, for the first time in a long time, genocide. And we in the West, that is in the United States, Germany and France, and what used to be the major Western powers are not only condoning it, but supplying it, and worse still, enabling it, okay? Now, it used to be, at least in my day, that children were special, that children were important. And you take care of children, you nurture them, you don't bomb them, you don't starve them, okay? Now, I don't know what has happened to humanity, and I dearly hope that Pope Francis is successful in his appeal. But I have to say that on this note, on this particular thing, I differ a little bit with Helga, because maybe because of my own tradition and my extreme disappointment with the lack of the ability of the institutional church to find its voice during World War II and now. The Pope can issue very, very nice rhetoric, but in the final analysis, with all due respect, it's up to us. As my favorite theologian once said, Annie Dillard is her name. She said, it's up to us, There is no one else but us. There never has been anyone but us. Now, if you want to be edified, if you want to have real hope, think of the people, think of the doctors that we're about to listen to from Gaza. Some of them are in Gaza now. Many have come back from Gaza with stories, true stories, stories that don't often appear in our major media about the slaughter of innocent children. What I would like to do in just a minute or two that I have left here is to refer once again to a common thing that Helga and I have. She referred to Vijay Prashad, who actually is an American professor. He used to teach at Tufts until he decided, it's no hope teaching at Tufts. I need to go out and found my own Tricontinental Institute. Now, I mentioned VJ because he publishes once a week, and I read his things avidly. And he has the same love for poetry that I do. And I would just finish with citing a poem that he called our attention to just 2 days ago. It's by a British poet, and it has to do with don't listen to the children. Don't name the children. Don't say the children's names. Now, this poet, a British poet, was immediately banned in Britain. That says something, doesn't it? Do most English people care about children? They used to, but we've descended into an Oliver Twist kind of regime here. So the British poet's name is Michael Rosen, and he responded to the carnage, to the genocide, to the slaughter of the innocents, not only in Gaza now, but in the West Bank and in southern Lebanon, with this kind of poem. The poem is called Don't Mention the Children. Here it goes. It's very brief. Don't mention the children. Don't name the dead children. The people must know the names of the must not know the names of the dead children. The names of the children must be hidden. The children shall remain nameless. The children must leave this world having no names. No one must know the names of the dead children. No one must say the names of the dead children. No one must even think that the children have names. People must understand it would be dangerous to know the names of the children. The people must be protected from knowing the names of the children. The names of the children could spread like wildfire. The people would not be safe if they knew the names of the children. Don't name the dead children. Don't remember the dead children. Don't think of the dead children. Don't say dead children. Okay, we are saying dead children, and we are appealing to the conscience of the world. And there's no better testimony to the fact that people do stand and people do incur incredible risk by staying, trying to cure, to make the children well and protect them. And you're about to hear some of these doctors for whom I have terrific respect. And I just wish that the doctors in our country, you know, they have a motto, do not do anything that harms, okay? Well, that's part of it. But they need to do something that heals. And if, as I think is the case, most American doctors care about the children, they have to go beyond do no harm. They have to get together and say, look, we are the same as these brave doctors that have gone to Gaza and served there. We want to make sure that we speak out against the carnage, and that when the new administration comes in and says, America first, well, that we have to remind America first that that day is over, okay? There is no more America exceptionalism, much less overweening pride to work America's will on the others. Exceptionalism. We are past exceptionalism. And meanwhile, we need to kind of put our shoulder to the wheel. And that is why I'm so delighted to have this chance simply to incur this little message from my own faith tradition. It's precisely at this time, after the story says, the biblical story, Jesus was born, that Herod decided that this was too much of a threat. Well, the Jesus message remains too much of a threat. And so I have a meager hope that when Joe Biden sees Pope Francis in just 1 week now, that anything good will happen. So I think that the lesson I draw from that is that we cannot look to the institutional church, no matter how florid or how good the rhetoric. We've got to do it ourselves, folks. Are there enough of us? There are enough of us. The last thing I'll say is that Cesar Chavez, the wonderful leader of the United Farm Workers, when he came up with the grape boycott idea, he said, okay, let's boycott all grapes in stores and everything. And his lieutenant said, Cesar, we can't do that. Why? Because there aren't enough of us. Cesar, there are enough of us. We just have to do action, because without action, nothing's going to happen. On that note, I wish you all a happy new year, but I wish you a new year tinged with empathy for what's going on. And I hope that you are as edified as I am to listen to the doctors, many of them American doctors, most of them American doctors, who don't satisfy themselves with nice pronouncements about we're not doing any harm, but with pronouncements in action. And not only are we doing no harm, we are trying to heal, trying to take care of the innocents that are being slaughtered. I'll close on that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ray McGovern, for that. Just, we wanted to make sure to highlight the Doctors Against Genocide activities and what they're doing right now, and the urgent appeal to, this is after now the bombing of the Kamal Adwan Hospital, and now the current director, Abu Safia, who has been taken in by Israeli forces, and my understanding is he's being tortured right now, unless there's an update to that. So we wanted to make sure to highlight this and the activities that they're doing, reaching out across broad spectrum of the political world in the United States and abroad in order to save the doctors and the people in this atrocious genocide that's going on right now. But it's my honor to have Dr. Nidal Jboor, who is the co-founder of Doctors Against Genocide, and tirelessly working to stop this. So please, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Jboor, and please go ahead.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Anastasia and Dennis, for having us here and giving us the opportunity to talk about what's happening in Gaza and what the doctors are trying to do to save the innocent and to save their colleagues in Gaza who have been targeted in the last year. Thank you, Mr. McGovern, for highlighting the plight of the children. Yes, the children. The world has failed its children. The 21st century world, led by the United States and the morals of the West, have failed the children of the world. Unfortunately, we are living in a world now that has become a child murderer. A mass slaughter of children has been happening in the past 15 months, live streamed in front of all of us, under the leadership, the support, the weapons, the bombs of the United States of America. Unfortunately, our current administration and system and leaders have exposed the complete moral bankruptcy of the West and of the United States, and they exposed their complete illegitimacy to lead this world. And I really think that the Western power and material power, their weapons, have become a threat on humanity. And it is something that we as American, as Mr. McGovern mentioned, we the people refuse to be part of. I think the majority of the American people would refuse to be part of mass slaughter of children, mass slaughter of civilians, of women. I think our leaders are failing us. I think what the United States administration has been doing is a treason to the United States itself. They should be charged with war crimes, complicity in genocide, plus a treason to their country. This is putting the United States of America and its future at risk. This is a strategic threat to our country by being complicit in genocide, part of genocide. This will have long-term ramification that we will all have to live with. But focusing now on the healthcare, again, thank you, Anastasia, for bringing us our organization called Doctors Against Genocide, because we think that the medical community has the moral obligation to stand up, to protect life, to protect civilians when everyone else failed, when politicians failed, when governments failed, when international institutions failed, when the United Nations failed. The doctor is the lawyer of the poor. That has been said for the last 100 years. We go to school to protect life, to protect the sanctity of life. And when everyone else failed, it is our job. Literally, we go to school to do that. So we are living up to our oath. We will protect life. We will be the defenders of civilians, of children, of women, of doctors, of healthcare workers, and we will do whatever we can in our capacity to do so and to expose all the criminals, whoever they are, whether they are the genocidal Zionist State of Israel or the complicit United States. This organization also has a medical definition of genocide, because we think genocide is like a disease. It is one of the gravest public health disasters in history. We read about genocide in the last 20th century, and we found out that genocide has claimed the lives of almost 250 million people, which is way more than all the lives that have been claimed by all wars, including World War I and World War II. It is more than the lives that have been claimed by pandemics. That's why we think advocating against genocide and combating genocide is a public health service. It's a public health grave risk that the doctors should take upon themselves. And we have been fighting against this genocide from day one. Doctors Against Genocide was the first organization in the world to recognize this as genocide from day one. We did that not as a propaganda, not as accusations, but based on scientific research and scientific study and evidence. We had evidence from day one that what Israel is doing is a genocide and putting the whole fate of the Palestinian people at the risk of being mass slaughtered by the belligerent Israeli forces and leaders and their genocidal rhetoric and army. We have been warning about against this all along. Unfortunately, because of the complicity of the United States and the unlimited amount of weapons and diplomatic support they are providing Israel, the whole world has failed to stop what has been happening from day one. We also noticed that part of the genocidal mechanism is the targeted attack on health care institutions and all civilian institutions, including schools, civilian infrastructure, and universities, because that is what differentiates genocide from regular wars. Regular wars, you fight armies. The wars between armies, between combatants, and usually you don't deliberately attack schools or hospitals or clinics because you just want to win the war. You don't want to destroy the ability of the society to survive or to recover or to build itself after the fact. Israel has been deliberately attacking hospitals and healthcare institutions from day one. Out of 36 hospitals that Gaza had before the war, only about 17 of them continue to be partially functioning. In the north of Gaza, there was 3 hospitals. 2 of them have been destroyed a while back. The last remaining hospital was called Kamal Udwan Hospital that was serving all the people in the north. Even that hospital was still compared to Western standards, a small hospital, but it is the only thing left that they have, and was at least trying to provide whatever care they can. But Israel has put the whole north and this particular hospital under siege for the last 80 days. They did not allow any medication, did not allow any supply, did not allow any doctors to go in to help the people there. They have been bombing the hospital and killing people both inside and outside the hospital. We have been in touch with Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya, who's the director of this hospital, for the last few months. He has been sending messages and pleading to the whole world to protect the hospital, to protect the patients who are there, to protect his colleagues. Unfortunately, no one listened. They killed more than a dozen of the healthcare workers inside the hospitals while they're taking care of their patients inside the hospital. They have killed many patients inside the hospitals. They killed even the son of the director, Hussam Abu Safiya, but despite all of this, he continued to stand by his patients. He continued to insist on helping the victims and the injured people in his hospital. They went further and they injured himself. They targeted him and he got shrapnel wounds to his thigh. And despite the lack of care in the hospital, despite the absence of any surgeon in that hospital to help him and help the victims there to do the surgery, he suffered with this one for the last month. It actually got infected at one point because it was not treated properly and they don't have the proper treatment for him. And despite all of this, he continued to be in the hospital, and he sent us a video saying that he will not leave his patients. He did not go to school for 20 years to abandon his people, that according to his medical ethics, he will never leave his people, his hospitals. So in a way, he has become the leader of medicine in the world, of the real ethics and moral ethics of medicine in the world. And we continued to talk to him, try to help him. Unfortunately, no one listened. In the last week, as you all know, Israel attacked the hospital for the last time and put it on fire, abducted all healthcare workers, abducted more than half of the patients who were there. Total is about 200 people, 240 people were abducted, and the rest, they were forced to flee on foot to a nearby hospital that has been abandoned more than 6 months. So there is no service in that hospital, and all the patients, even the critically wounded patients, were forced to flee to go to an abandoned hospital where there is no care for them to have. Since then, we don't know the whereabouts of Dr. Hussam Abu Safiya. He's a colleague, he's a friend. We have been in touch with him. We saw Israel abducting him, of course, illegally. We have eyewitness account that he was tortured during that abduction. Since then, we did not hear anything about him. A group of doctors, the Physicians for Human Rights, have been trying to reach the Israeli genocidal authorities to check on him and see his whereabouts and his safety. And last we heard yesterday, Israel now is denying that he's even there. And they have been playing this game all along. This means most probably that either they killed him or he's in a bad condition and they don't want to take any responsibility, and they start playing the game. Oh, we, the army, we don't know about him. He might be in the prison service. The prison service will say, no, we did not have him. And they keep playing this game. So no one has the right news until people forget about the situation. Then after a while, we know or we hear that something bad happened to him. They did this before. Many doctors have been murdered during abduction. One of them is one of the most renowned orthopedic surgeon. His name is Dr. Nidal Jboor. He was abducted by Israel earlier this year, and he was detained at that torture detention center that's called SD Taman. It is just outside of Gaza. Israel has built this facility to torture the detainees and the prisoners there. Few of them were doctors. As I mentioned, Dr. Nidal Jboor, he was the head of the orthopedic unit at Al-Shifa Hospital. He was tortured for almost 40 days. Unfortunately, he was even raped to death. And we have an investigation, even from the Israeli whistleblowers that proves that. Unfortunately, what is happening continues to get worse by the day. There is a full-scale extermination campaign now happening in the north of Gaza. They are attacking everything that moves. They're destroying everything. They're destroying the hospitals, the school, the buildings. They are killing every form of life. It's not just genocide, actually. This is something that's even beyond genocide, that has been live streamed in front of all of us for more than 15 months. It is our moral obligation as doctors, healthcare workers, and civilians of the world, and as good Americans, we should stand up. We should refuse to be part of this crime, not in our name, not with our weapons, not with our bombs. I think more than 80% of the American people are against this. They did not give consent for this. The system is broken. It only works to the benefit of special interest of lobbies, the Zionist lobby, whether it's Jewish Zionist lobby or Christian Zionist lobby. And we, the regular people of America, are the ones who are paying for this, and also are going to be blamed for this down the road. That's why we should mobilize more. We should ask our fellow Americans and our medical institutions stand up. Unfortunately, the Western medical institutions, the American medical institutions, including the AMA, including the American Pediatric Society, American Psychiatric Society, all of them have been silent. Their moral bankruptcy is very embarrassing and shameful. They always claim to be on the right side of history. They always claim that they are, stand up for all lives, but their moral bankruptcy, their double standard have been exposed in the last year. The AMA and none of these institutions has issued any statement for ceasefire. Last year, we tried many times for them not to take any side, just to issue a call for ceasefire, and it has been shut down, and they refuse to take any stand or any call to stop this madness and mass slaughter. We think that these institutions are also complicit in the genocide, and they should go. The AMA, American Institution, was part of the institutions that were silent on the Holocaust. They were part of the institutions that were instrumental during slavery. They never took the right position when it mattered. And we are calling them out that they too are part of this complicity in genocide, and they are enabling the genocide. We are mobilizing our colleagues to stand up and expose these institutions and force them to take the right stand. I have my colleague, Dr. Karama Hawash, the co-founder also of Doctors Against Genocide. She's going to talk more about our actions that we are taking now. I just wanted to take a general talk about what is happening in Gaza. Of course, they are claiming that Dr. Abu Safiya and his colleagues are terrorists, which is a false claim. They claim this about every hospital, about every institution. You cannot have children who are terrorists. They have been murdering children. We have more than 20,000 children who have been mass slaughtered by Israel, and these are not terrorists. Dr. Abu Safiya is not terrorist. We have been talking to him for a whole year. Israel itself never mentioned that he is a terrorist or has any links to terrorism. Only now, after he was obtained and abducted, they are claiming this. They never showed any evidence. It's all fabrications and justifications for genocide. Again, thank you, Anastasia, for giving me the opportunity, and I'll stop at this point. And if there's any question, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'm making sure to include in the chat links for the actions that you have from your website. So I have the Doctors Against Genocide website and also the Free Gaza Doctors. And I just want to make a note before we continue. I did receive a message, a report from two UN rapporteurs. They noted that more than 1,057 Palestinian health and medical professionals have been killed so far, and many have been arbitrarily arrested. Quote, heroic actions of Palestinian medical colleagues in Gaza teach us what it means to have taken the medical oath. They are also a clear signal of a depraved humanity that has allowed a genocide to continue for well over a year, the experts said. Under occupation, Intentional assaults on healthcare facilities have the potential to expose individuals to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, and many constitute a war crime. In Gaza, this is clearly part of a well-established pattern of genocide for which Israeli leaders will have to be held accountable, they concluded. Quote, "We urge Israel to end its current assaults on Gaza and cease its attacks on healthcare facilities. They must also ensure the immediate release of Dr. Hassam Abu Safia and all other arbitrarily detained healthcare workers. May they be the last arbitrarily arrested Palestinians, and may the new year begin under different auspices." So that was from two UN rapporteurs who were on the ground witnessing what was going on. So UN special rapporteurs. Oh, here's the names. Dr. Mofo Kang on the right to health, and Francesca Albanese on the human rights in the occupied Palestinian territories. So I'll make sure to include that in the chat as well for people to look at. So next we shall continue with our agenda here. So thank you so much, Dr. Jboor, for that, for going through that. I'd like to go to Dr. Mimi Sayed. She's an emergency medical doctor and recently returned from Gaza. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Mimi Sayed, and for everything that you're doing.
Hi, thank you for having me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Mimi Sayed, board-certified emergency medicine physician. I was born, raised, and trained in the US. I was in Gaza on a medical mission twice, once in August and once in December. I just returned last night to the US. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I stand before you not just as a medical professional, but as a deeply concerned human being who has witnessed the harsh realities in Gaza. Over the course of 2 medical missions, I have encountered unimaginable suffering and devastation, particularly among the most innocent children. As a mother of 3 children, I cannot imagine how any parent can look away. Despite my prolonged period in Gaza in August, and again more recently in December, I did not encounter any military operations or combatants. Instead, what I encountered were countless civilians, men, women, and children suffering from injuries that no human should ever have to endure. I resuscitated a little girl named Mira, no older than 4 years old, who was shot in the head by a drone sniper while eating breakfast in her tent. I also treated a 9-year-old named Ayla, who came to us with an open skull wound with her brain matter exposed, hanging on to dear life because of a shrapnel injury. Each case echoed a haunting narrative of loss, pain, and unfulfilled lives. These are just 2 examples of the dozens and dozens that I saw in my time there. Time and again, I found myself amid scenes of chaos and despair. We faced multiple mass casualty incidents, each more heart-wrenching than the last. The resources available for treating the wounded were grossly inadequate, creating an excruciating reality where patients succumbed to their injuries before we could provide them with the care that they desperately needed. The aftermath of these assaults leaves scars that extend beyond physical injuries. There are dire issues of malnutrition, dismal living conditions, water contamination, and no sewage system. While I was there, 6 newborn babies died in their tents due to hypothermia. I met a newborn who almost died of dehydration because she was being fed sugar water. Her mother could not afford formula or produce breast milk due to malnutrition. The statistics speak for themselves. Almost 1,000 babies born in Gaza this past year have died before their first birthday. An average of 1 to 3 children are dying daily because of malnourishment, according to the Human Rights Watch. 3,000 children have lost their limbs, according to WHO. This is a direct insult to the birth rate of the Gazan people, and it must stop immediately. Reflecting on these experiences, I am reminded of the values that shaped my early life. I was raised by immigrant parents who embodied the American dream. Their hard work and perseverance led to a life filled with hope and opportunities. They believed in the principles of compassion, dignity, and justice. Standing in Gaza, however, those values felt increasingly distant. I could not reconcile what I saw with what I believe our country represented. What troubles me most is our collective responsibility. As citizens of a nation that prides itself on justice and human rights, what are we doing to address the suffering of innocent civilians like the ones that I treated? How can we ensure our tax dollars do not contribute any longer to the perpetuation of violence, but rather support humanitarian efforts that offer hope and healing? Let us come together as a community, a government, and as human beings. Let us advocate for policies that prioritize the protection of our civilians, support humanitarian efforts, and promote peaceful resolutions to conflict. We must hold ourselves accountable to the very values that we claim to uphold in this country. Please help me and Doctors Against Genocide for a call to action. We call for a permanent ceasefire. We call for unlimited aid to enter Gaza to restore humanity for the Gazan people and stop the targeting of healthcare workers and hospitals, beginning with the immediate release of all healthcare workers, including Dr. Abu Safiya, the director of Kamaled 1. Mr. McGovern so keenly noted that as healthcare workers, we have more of a responsibility than do no harm. As healthcare workers, we are the protectors of humanity, and when it is being violated, it is our duty to speak up. Thank you for your time and your commitment to making a difference in the lives of those who need it the most.
Thank you, Dr. Said. It's pretty heartbreaking to hear what you went through, but thank you for doing that. I'll try to gather myself here. I just want to encourage everyone who's either on the different platforms who are watching this live or who are on the Zoom, please distribute this material, get this out far and wide. Whether you're on the left, the right, if you know people within the Trump administration, whatever, get this out as far as you possibly can in order to make this happen. I know there's an emergency session happening right now at the UN on exactly what we're talking about right now. So I'm sure there'll be more updates as this session continues to go on. But thank you so much, Dr. Said. I'm going to ask, we have a friend on from Ecuador. His name is Fernando Garzon. He's the leader of the Ecuadorian-Palestinian Union, and he'll be going through touching on kind of what we were discussing in the beginning of what Helga was bringing to the table about the Jubilee, which is very relevant to what we're discussing right now. So please welcome Fernando Garzon. Please go ahead.
Buenos días a todos y a todas.
Good morning to all of you. Most, especially by listening, I am full of sorrow and heartbreak, but I will try to recover because the topic we are going to cover, although it is connected to what is going on at this time, has much to do with the Jubilee that we want to talk about, that the Pope has called for. It is because international financial institutions have to do not only with the debt, but also what is happening in Palestine. Financial interests tied to military industry and territorial control, as we shall see. We go now into the issue that I have prepared. The Pope Francis, established that this current year will be made into a jubilee, which is something that the Catholic Apostolic Roman Church carries out every 25 years, but also together with all Catholic communities in the world on the basis of the concept of the forgiveness of sin and the redemption of people from situations which afflict them, and is also linked to what the Pope also said this last Christmas Eve. He said, let us cancel unfair and odious debts and feed the hungry. Pope Francis said this just a few days ago. This is one element of the path to be taken, and to share something along the lines of what has been mentioned about the children of Gaza and also the birth of Jesus in Bethlehem. You might ask, which elements? Well, why was he in Bethlehem? Because Joseph, his legal father, owned property in the Roman Empire at that time, which was indebting people precisely on the basis of taxes. So he had to go to Bethlehem because his family had property in Bethlehem. This is a trend that financial elements have had undue weight in the life of peoples and nations. Much has been said about the year 2000 Jubilee. There was already a Jubilee in 1999. There was a Jubilee to commemorate the 2,000 years of the new era, and which established the 2000 Jubilees in these parts of the world, and in Ecuador particularly, resulted in the non-payment of the debt, which was successful in not paying a debt that was unjust, immoral, odious, and other terms which have legal value, judicial worth. And we mention this because those of us who fostered this, who promoted this from among the civil society, were involved, and it was promoted during the Rafael Correa revolutionary government of citizenship participation, and this is something which led to his political persecution. And this was also very much due to the fact that this government was the first one that established the legal rights of nature, and also provided asylum to Julian Assange, and also established guidelines to regulate artificial intelligence. And I'm not saying that these are not isolated elements, but they are government. There are governance issues that need to be resolved as far as condoning debts. And let us then look into some of the elements that outline this process we are discussing. 1 second. In the year 2000, Jubilee 2000 was created by civil society, mainly launched from Guayaquil, promoted by elements within the Correa government, Patricia Davila, Eric Salgado, and some certain other people who constituted this beginning in the year 2000, much before the Rafael Correa government. It was possible to establish that foreign debt of a very considerable amount. There was $300 billion debt, which represented 120% of the gross industrial product and over 300% of the export volume. So these same civil society actors promoted a decree which was signed under the Correa government and under Finance Minister Ricardo Patiño to create a committee of what would be the study of the foreign debt. In this context, certain determining aspects were established for this process. It was based on various principles, originally defined as what is called the odious debt. This has been documented. It was it's a proposal made by Alexander Naum Sachs, a Russian professor from the 20s, who defined odious debt as debt which lacks any benefit to the population and was not incurred in the interest of the people or the state, but against these interests. And this would make the lender an illegitimate lender. This was this perspective, Nidal perspective, was ignored and abandoned for decades. But during the Rafael Correa government and a group of study academics, including people like Alejandro Olmos, who is well known international, we were able to establish that the debt was not only odious, but also illegal and unconstitutional. Three key traits that would establish why the debt must not be paid. And that is without even going into many positions held by many world leaders. And in this context, it must be stated that the last tranches of the debt, the Global Fund and the Brady funds, there were 4 or 5 key financial institutions which represented the Ecuadorian state prior to this decision to not pay the debt, were Citibank, Chase Manhattan, JP Morgan. That is, financial institutions which are still present in our countries. This is why we stated that it was very important to keep in mind the influence of the financial spheres and banking institutions that are even now very well known. So by 2007, when this decision was taken not to pay the debt, it was established that all the way back to 1980, so we're talking here about the military dictatorship of that time, the debt began to accumulate, spectacularly from it grew to $17,244,000,000. This gives you an idea of the magnitude for a country as small as Ecuador, which is our point of reference. Really, this situation affected our development effectively, and we have mentioned how important development is. So this issue of debt was very much interconnected. There was commercial debt, which at that time was 30% of the total public debt. By 2007, internal debt, multilateral organization debt, and bilateral organization debt added up, because the influence of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank on these conditionalities, which led to an illegal and shameful establishment of debt repayment policies, which, as we've said oftentimes, this external debt had become an eternal debt. It is a process of colonization, because our first debt framework began with the British debt for the financing of the independence wars in Latin America and other parts of the world. And this financing came from England. So it is a trend that is not a new thing of this century. It's a process that has gone on for centuries. And to bring these aspects down to the ground, we need to define various key aspects. The forms linked to certain modalities of bond negotiations, establishing property and management of bonds, particularly in many banks around the world, which illegally impose and bypass all constitutional safeguards and turned the debt into an odious debt because it directly affected the population's standard of living, because the more debt needs to be paid, the less can be invested in social as well as military, overt and covert spending on military expenditures. So finally, I would like to mention various other failures. For instance, the irregularity in the financing of projects. For instance, it was said that debt cannot be canceled without knowing that there was the necessary document to prove that the debt was illegal was being hidden. That is, this was allowed by national complicity within our country itself. This goes back to what I said at the beginning. In 1927, Alexander Noam Sachs, that we've mentioned already,
Hello,
said
Fernando?
explicitly that a despotic, Senor.
Just if you could summarize, because we have two more speakers to go into the discussion period. But thank you so much for what you're going through.
Sí, para concluir solamente con la
in
frase
conclusion, yes, I
ruso,
just want to repeat
que decía
the
que un poder despótico contra una
saying
deuda
of this
más
Russian
destinada a satisfacer las
economist
necesidades de
that
intereses del Estado está
a
destinado a
despotic
fortalecer su
power
régimen despótico
does
para
not
reprimir a la población.
spend its resources
Gracias
on
por
the
su
improvement of
oportunidad.
the state and the people, but in the strengthening of its despotic power over the population. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Fernando Garzon. I actually, in my emotional, after being very emotional after Dr. Syed, I forgot to ask Dennis Small to introduce you. I know he wanted to say just a couple of things before we move on. Please go ahead, Dennis Small.
Yeah, just briefly, two things by way of context, which I think will underscore the significance of what Fernando was just saying. As Anastasia mentioned, he's well known to people on the IPC as being one of the leaders of the Ecuadorian-Palestinian Union, but he also, back in the period of 2008, was a vice minister in the government, deputy minister. He was the technical secretary of the Ministry for Policy Coordination. That was the year and one of the agencies through which the study was conducted, declaring the debt to be odious and illegitimate and illegal. And I want to simply report to people that the Ecuadorian case is the only case, at least that I know of in recent history, where a completed study has been conducted which scientifically demonstrated that the debt which had been imposed on the country was completely, totally illegal and odious, and therefore justice was served by repudiating it. It's a small country. It's a very big lesson for the entire world today as we sit under a $2 quadrillion debt bubble, which is strangling our economies and also creating the circumstances for the kinds of wars we've been discussing and the ongoing genocide in places such as Gaza. So just that by way of context for this part of the discussion.
Thank you, Dennis. I just wanted to let everybody know, I posted in the chat a number of videos, the longer video of the emergency event that Doctors Against Genocide held last Sunday, and also a few clips that have been made by supporters of Norm Finkelstein, Mark Perlmutter, and I think there's more that are going to be generated throughout the week and helping to get more of these out. If you'd like to help get this material out, please contact us or contact Doctors Against Genocide. I'm sure they would be very happy to have your assistance in doing this. But we will start going into the discussion period. We are going to have two special people start us off in the discussion period. We'll open up for people to raise their hands, but I want to bring in the co-founder, the partner of Dr. Nidal Jboor. We have Dr. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. I'm so sorry.
Karama Hawash Kumerli, to make it easy for you.
Karama Hawash Kumari, co-founder of Doctors Against Genocide. So I just want to bring you in as well as another person to start off the discussion period. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be amongst all of you. Mimi, amazing. Just what you said was just piercing. And we have all been feeling the same way. We have been feeling sick from genocide. Sick from genocide, not in the sense that we are fragile, not in the sense that we prioritized our mental health over what is happening in Gaza, but because what is happening is not a natural thing. We humans are not meant to witness children being obliterated into pieces right in front of our eyes. We should not be seeing pictures of children missing limbs and bleeding from both legs while their parents are holding them, and there are no hospitals for them to receive them because the hospitals have been completely decimated. What is happening in Gaza is something that is beyond what we can imagine. So we, at Doctors Against Genocide, we have been fighting this genocide from the very, very beginning. And at this point, we are calling for a campaign called Sick from Genocide. Sick from Genocide is a response to our humanity and how we are feeling about what is happening. There is a genocide sickness that is happening to us, and the symptoms are extreme sadness, depression, inability to participate in normal activities. We are not able to focus. We are not able to remember things. We are confused, and we are experiencing extreme grief. And people who have mental health issues have had exacerbation of their symptoms. Chronic fatigue, sleep disturbances, even GI symptoms like nausea, headaches, increased blood pressure, increased hypertension, increased diabetes manifestation. These are all physical manifestations of being witnesses to this genocide. And what is making this worse is the lack of acknowledgement that this is happening, especially in our workplaces. We go to see our patients as doctors, and we are expected to pretend that nothing is happening. And we are not even given the space to actually speak and advocate for our colleagues. It is a moral injury and a moral insult to every single one of us. Today, I wrote a letter to the CEO of Boston Children's Hospital, and to the head of my department, and I asked for a sick leave. And I said that I cannot function anymore after over a year of trying to prevent this genocide with my activism. And I wrote to them that I cannot and I need this hospital that is dedicated to the well-being of children to help take a stand and be an upstander and not just accept this as if we have nothing to do with it. We have everything to do with it as American citizens and as American institutions. We are paying for it. We are covering it politically. Our representatives in the UN Security Council veto every ceasefire. They are actively allowing this genocide to happen. And we, the medical community, have the duty to speak up and not allow these politicians to get away with it, and not allow our superiors in the institutions to silence us, censor us, and even fire some of us who speak up. We refuse to do that. We swore an oath to do no harm. And in the words of our colleagues from Gaza, from Al Auda Hospital, they wrote on a board in the hospital, "We have done all what we could. Whoever stays till the end, remember us." This is true medicine. These are the true doctors that we need to remember and we need to respect and we need to copy. Not the doctors who say, if you say the word genocide, you will be fired, or the doctors who say to the others that speaking about this should never be allowed in the workspace. This is exactly what we should be talking about in the workplace, because we are entrusted with people's lives. We are not just responsible for one visit that lasts 15 minutes or 20 minutes. We are also responsible for how we spend our money and how our actions affect people everywhere in the world. We are one planet, and we are responsible for the health and well-being for everyone. So thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you for supporting us. Please join Doctors Against Genocide. Every healthcare worker should be against genocide. There is no excuse not to join us in this fight, because this is the fight for humanity. This is the fight for every single life. And this is not politics. This is medicine, and this is humanity. Thank you.
So much for everything that you're doing. And, just to touch on some of the questions that are already coming in, 'cause people are asking, what can they do? What can they do? One, I posted a couple of initiatives that are in there, but we also have on Josephine Gilbo, who is an incredible activist. She's been organizing people on the left and right and everything you can imagine to try to get as much material out as possible. She's a former U.S. Army all-source intel analyst and associate director of communications for the Eisenhower Media Network. And I've seen you on many interventions as well, Josephine. Thank you so much for going in your full uniform and denouncing this genocide that's going on. But please, why don't you talk about, what the activities are that you're doing?
So thank you, first of all, for having me, Schiller Institute. It's truly an honor to be amongst all of you, because I know that if you're here, you're human. And so that gives me hope. And before I talk a little bit about what I've been doing and what I am calling for others to do, I want to just explain my perspective of what I have witnessed. And I want to offer to anyone listening who I am, so that perhaps you can connect with me to better feel and hear what I'm about to say. And so before I speak to what I have witnessed, I want to say I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm a 17-year Army veteran. I'm a middle-class Christian woman from America, and I'm a really, really hard worker. I stand before you today with a heart burdened by the unspeakable suffering and devastation that continues to unfold in Gaza. For nearly 1 year, I have witnessed with my own eyes children getting bombed daily. I have watched mothers holding their children with legs blown off. I have witnessed children's entire bodies burned. I have witnessed children on fire inside of tents. I have witnessed mass casualty events of children laying across the street, bombed where they were just playing. I have watched children being pulled from the rubble weeks later, and they are nothing but bones and skin, because the reality is they were still alive underneath the building, but because they have bombed every tool for them to dig these people out of the rubble, they are stuck there, dying a slow death of dehydration and starvation. Every single day for a year, this is what I am witnessing. To say I'm traumatized is an understatement. To say I'm angry is an understatement. And confused, that's an understatement. As an American, I'm going to acknowledge the painful truth that my country has, through its policies, actions, and inactions, enabled this atrocity to continue. The United States of America has provided financial support, military aid, and political backing to the Israeli forces perpetrating these crimes. We have failed to use our power, influence, and resources to intervene. The military equipment and weapons that have been used come from American taxpayers like myself. The political support given to leaders who commit these atrocities come from my politicians who are bought out by AIPAC, a foreign lobby group. The millions and millions of dollars that they have spent this last election cycle to buy out the politicians in America is astronomical. As an American, I'm horrified to know that my country's actions, whether through direct military aid, diplomatic support, or economic partnership, have contributed to the suffering of an entire people. This is not the nation I believe in. This is not the America I want to be a part of. But shame alone is not enough. Acknowledging the shame is the first step, but it is only through action that we can begin to repair the damage that has been done. As a citizen of the United States, I commit to holding my government accountable. I will demand that our leaders prioritize human rights over geopolitical interests. I will speak out against AIPAC for the rest of my life. I will stand in solidarity with the people of Gaza, amplifying their voices and cries for justice. I will push for legal action against the war criminals and the politicians who are guilty of this genocide. How can you help push this? As many of you know, recently I went to Washington, D.C. and interrupted a Veteran Affairs Committee hearing in my military uniform, hoping to inspire others to have the moral courage to face our corrupt politicians with the same force. We need every single veteran's voice that we can find, every single American's voice that we can find to face confront the evil that exists inside of our politicians. There are 4 other actions I want to talk about today. A call to lawyers in America. Recently, 2 Democratic congressmen from Northern California were served this week with legal documents in a class action lawsuit filed by hundreds of their constituents who argue that lawmakers illegally forced them into complicity with the Israelis' genocidal annihilation of Gaza. Taxpayers Against Genocide, a group of more than 600 constituents of Representative Mike Thompson and Jared Huffman, represented by the firm, and I'm going to spell it SZETO, Wong Law, said it delivered a complaint excuse me, for declaratory an injunctive relief to the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday, where it was received by Deputy General Counsel for the House of Representatives. My call is to any and all lawyers in the United States. Please organize together. Create an opportunity for constituents like myself to begin these types of lawsuits against, we need these lawsuits in every single state in America as soon as possible. So this is a call to lawyers to please, if you know any lawyers, if you're friends with any lawyers, if you are a lawyer, to please organize together and support an initiative for people like myself who would gladly sign on to a lawsuit against my senator and representative. This is a call to universities. Universities need to create an outreach, an organization for students to be able to connect into that are facing expulsion and repercussions for speaking out against genocide. These college kids were so brave and smart to do what they did with the encampments, and for any future action, they're looking at getting punished. We need universities that are going to stand tall and accept these students and their credits to come over to their universities. So I don't know what that looks like, but we need universities to come together and create a platform, a website, a resource that any of these college kids can go to that are facing expulsion to transfer their credit hours over and continue their education. A call to government officials and global leaders. I think the Doctors Against Genocide co-founder mentioned several weeks ago, a letter was written to the incoming President-elect Trump, signed by the co-founders of Doctors Against Genocide. We need a letter from every single organization, from Schiller Institute, Doctors Against Genocide, Eisenhower Media Network, VIPS, Ray McGovern's organization, every single organization to be writing a letter to the President-elect Trump's team with facts about what's going on. There needs to be pressure points from every corner. Global leaders, we need ambassadors, global human rights organizations to, like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and Save the Children, to be writing letters now and having them delivered to the Trump team. We need them to be writing letters yesterday, but especially now. Americans, more actions. We need to start with organizing days in Congress. Reach out to the Code Pink group. Code Pink, there's a website you can reach out to and sign up for days in Congress. Here you will learn how to speak to representatives, how to speak to senators, how to understand which facts are the most important ones that you need to be communicating to them. That way you can go off on your own with your own organization and do this. We need this every single day in Congress, a new group going around. We need to flood the halls of Congress every single day. And finally, a call to corporations and employers to protect their citizens globally from war criminals who are returning as our neighbors and as our colleagues after committing some of the worst crimes against humanity. I'm talking about the Israeli Defense Forces. We can no longer accept working next to, living next to, or being next to these human beings. I call for the protection of all people from Israeli forces who were deployed and participated in this genocide. Employees, please demand with an email to your HR representative to be transparent with you and understand if they employ these war criminals. Finally, don't give up. What we're witnessing is traumatizing. We will indeed end the genocide, and we will ensure that Israel faces accountability for what it has done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Josephine. That is a lot of very good ideas, and there are a lot of people from, I see in the chat, from Veterans for Peace, Amnesty International, many different groups who want to show their support and helping you and Doctors Against Genocide get this out. I'd like to ask Helga Tsepp-LaRouche if you have any response to the doctors or Josephine before we move on.
Well, I must tell you, as a German, a lot went through my head because 80 years ago, there was a commitment in Germany which said never again. And, I think that I will pledge to break through this incredible indifference which has been imposed in Germany, where you are not even allowed to mention the word genocide. And if you say that the Americans are, or that the American institutions are complicit, unfortunately, I cannot speak the Germans free of that same accusation, and therefore I can only make the absolute pledge that we from the IPC and the Schiller Institute, we will use this heartbreaking stories, what you all the witnesses from Gaza were telling us, to make sure that every doctor, every hospital, every lawyer, every diplomat, just everybody we can mobilize, that we really use the testimony you have just given and make sure that we create a movement worldwide powerful enough to stop this in the short term. And one immediate focus, obviously, is the incoming Trump team. And we will absolutely try to help whatever we can to make that happen.
Thank you. Okay, so we are going to continue with our discussion period. I just want to point out, if you are on a one of the many outlets where this is being broadcast, if you're on YouTube, go into the description period and the description area, and you'll find the link to get the RSVP, to get the Zoom link to hop on. You must be registered to get onto this meeting to talk with the speakers. Right now, if you are on any other platform, please go to schillerinstitute.org, and right on the top of the website, you'll find the RSVP page where you can register and get the Zoom link. So please do that right now if you'd like to join the discussion. And I'm seeing more people hopping on, which is great. So that means people are getting the link. So with that, we're going to move to the hands that are raised. And Dave, just let me know when we've cut the stream.